We've talked a lot about exits on this show, and we obviously will again. It's the finish line of the entrepreneurial race. But what happens after that coveted exit? What does life look like for a founder who's achieved what so many others are striving for? Today, we're going to dive deep into that very question with Timothy Armoo, a serial entrepreneur who sold his influencer marketing company Fanbytes in a multi-million-pound deal at the age of 27. But this isn't a story about how to build and sell a successful startup. It's actually about what comes next. Tim's journey post-exit is an exploration of identity, purpose, and redefining success. From the initial high of the acquisition to the unexpected lows and the search for what truly brings fulfillment, Timothy's story offers a look at the emotional rollercoaster that follows a big win in the startup world. But what's truly captivating about Timothy's current chapter is his unconventional approach to business. He's not following the typical path of immediately jumping into another venture-backed startup or becoming a full-time investor. Instead, he's crafting a unique strategy that involves everything from funding lithium mines in Africa to investing in avocado imports. In this episode, we'll dive deep into Timothy's philosophy of business flipping, a strategy that focuses on quick wins and exits rather than building long-term ventures. We'll explore how he's leveraging his skills in deal-making and arbitrage to create a lifestyle that brings him joy and fulfillment. Tim's insights offer a fresh perspective on success, happiness, and the true meaning of entrepreneurship. So, let's get into it. My interview with Timothy Armoo. Let's go. So, we've been talking and hanging out, IRL, little work days and stuff. And I think it's fair to say you're up to some relatively more interesting stuff than me right now. Maybe that's because, when you're doing something for so long, it doesn't necessarily feel quite so interesting, whereas you seem to be doing something new often, and newness is exciting. And I loved our last conversation, you telling me a little bit about the things that you are exploring post-exit of Fanbytes. So I asked you to come in and share that with the audience because I think it is exceptionally interesting information for people in business generally, but definitely for entrepreneurs to think about business slightly differently. And certainly slightly differently to the way that people like you and me have been conditioned to think about business anyway, which is the love of the building. Yeah. So let's start post-building exit, right? You went through an exit at Fanbytes.
Yeah.
Then what?
Then I went on the entrepreneurial roller coaster, which happens anytime you get some kind of big win. You basically end up having a bit of it's not quite imposter syndrome. It's just like a bunch of different waves of incredible happiness and then incredible angst. So the first wave for me after the acquisition, when it came out, it was public news and everything was like, oh my God, this is the most amazing thing ever. And then the second thing was actually, my world has changed, but the entire world hasn't changed. So I remember going to Sainsbury's and I was like, where's the applause? Where's the choir? Like, somebody show me some
You know
love.
what the answer is? It was in Waitrose. You were in the wrong place.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
know.
You got money now. You don't have to shop in Sainsbury's.
That's true. Maybe I'll try it again. And then the third one is actually going, well, what do I want to do with my time now? And I think that for me was the hardest bit, because my immediate thought was, when people asked me the question, what are you going to do now? Was that I had to go bigger, right? Because it was like the pursuit of bigger exits, bigger team. And so
It's also an incredibly annoying question.
It is, right? And I don't think people mean it out of malice. I think it's more, it's just curiosity. And that for me was where a lot of stuff seemed to come from, where, I'd say I want to build a B2B data startup. Like, I don't care. I never cared about B2B data, right?
But you told people you did.
Yeah, because...
Why?
Because when I think about in the conventional tech world, the ones who raise the highest valuations and everything else, it was all some kind of B2B company doing something boring. And so for me, even though I didn't have a clear idea of what I want to do, saying B2B data and like exploring that, because I did actually explore that, because I thought, well, this is how we build $100 million business, right? Or this is how we build $1 billion business, was a proxy for me to say, right, we're now going bigger now, right? And really that was that was me trying to play someone else's game rather than trying to play my own game.
Interesting. It's fascinating that you can go through the cult of personality that entrepreneurs have, and then the, accomplishment of an exit.
Yeah.
And other people, press articles, other people telling you you're great, all the stuff that strokes one's ego that actually feels amazing and builds you up a lot as well, and makes you feel like, actually, there's a lot of truth in what they're all saying about me. I am a fucking legend. I am great. And still, when someone's like, what are you doing? I'm like, shit, now I really have to live up to that hype. And say something I don't even know if I want to do, just so that they think I'm interesting.
Yeah, because, for most entrepreneurs and a lot of the founders I'm sure you talk to, they're almost two selves, right? There's like the inner self and then there's the outer self. The outer self is what you want others to think about you, which is this daredevil, goes, gets the deal, does all of the things. And then the inner self is the one who still has levels of angst, levels of doubt, and as much as you can, you try and project your outer self, or as much as you can, you try and close the gap between your inner self and your outer self. And often that never really works unless you are comfortable with the fact that your inner self is going to constantly be that anxious person, right? And so, I when we sold, it was like, dude, like, your life is kind of dope. Like, you grew up poor on a council estate and now you're rich at 27. Like, fuck, you've done it, right? And then when people were asking me almost, what do you want to do now? I was like, I don't really want to do anything now because, like, I've done it, right? And so I had to, like, invent stuff which really helped to preserve that outer self. And it is a challenge. I'm sure every single founder goes through that, regardless of where you are really in the journey.
Yeah, right. As in, there's always that sense of identity.
Yeah.
I actually think there's a lot to unpick of that specific topic. Yeah. Timo from Fanbytes, and then you've exited.
Yeah.
And being Timo from Fanbytes isn't even a good thing, right? No one really wants that. No one wants that identity. I don't want to be Dan from Heights. No, I don't want to be Dan from Grabble. I want to be Dan.
Yeah.
I don't want to be Dan from something. And every entrepreneur knows that that is the ultimate trap. You really want to avoid that trap.
Yeah.
Yet, you go outside that trap and now you're Dan of London. And it's a bit like, London. Oh, okay. Am I nobody?
So I'll tell you what, for me, it was never actually being Timo from Fanbytes. So one of the things I did before we sold was there was a book I read called Before the Exit. And it's like a super short book, but the guy goes through these thought experiments as to how you would feel and what you should think about before you get some kind of an acquisition. One of the things he says is that you end up identifying with your old company, right? So as you mentioned, Dan from Heights, Timo from Fanbytes. For me, it was actually never Timo from Fanbytes, because I always, Fanbytes was designed to have some kind of acquisition. It was actually more like Timo the entrepreneur. I had to at some point always be doing something because I had to live up to the idea of like Timo the entrepreneur, because it was, what else am I going to do, right? And so this was why, even though really what I wanted to do was just chill, like, my CTO from Fanbytes is now on his next company.
Yeah.
And that company is going to do well, Mitchell.
Yeah.
Brilliant Searchland, company. Right?
It's like, really smart.
Brilliant business, blah, blah, right? And I talked to him. And I remember the first time that I talked to him, I was like, yo, you are built different, right? Because I needed to chill. Like, I needed to take a mental break, but you went in.
Yeah, he left early to start something new.
Yeah.
Literally left to start.
Yeah. And I'm like, that's cool. That's impressive, right? But also, that's your DNA. And I shouldn't feel necessarily bad for not having that DNA. And I think after the acquisition, I felt a bit bad because I was like, well, at the current moment, Timo's not the entrepreneur anymore because he's not building a new company.
Interesting. But how much do you also think that part of that dynamic is you were the CEO in that company and you were rolling out into ultimately an earnout inside a company, which is a normal part of a journey.
Yeah.
And, Mitchell, CTO, and this stuff often happens with co-founders and stuff. He wasn't the CEO. So there's also more of a burning desire to be like, I can do that.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. There definitely is that as well. Okay, so post-acquisition, you're sitting around doing nothing? I basically just sat around doing nothing. It's so funny, right? Because now I look back at the post-acquisition period, and during that moment or during those periods, I convinced myself I was doing stuff, right? Because I was not just like in my bed, just lying down. I was meeting friends. I was talking my ideas. I was like trying to start new things, or trying to do different experiments. But now I look back 2 years on, 18 months on, I'm like, you did absolutely nothing. Like nothing that you did was actually consequential. And I think that was needed.
So I liken this actually to, I'm reading a book at the moment called The Artist's Way. You ever read that?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, there's morning pages.
Yeah.
So I do my morning pages every day. And, context for listeners on morning pages is you basically write down 3 pages of whatever comes into your mind to get the junk out of your head.
Yeah.
So that the rest of your day, there's good stuff.
Yeah.
Or better stuff. You've sort of cleaned the junk. Sounds actually totally analogous to what you're talking about.
Yeah.
There's a couple of months of like fuck all, just a bit of meandering, a bit of this, a bit of that.
Yeah.
But it clears the head out to actually start to do something good.
And you have to actively do it. This is something which I think in hindsight I did well, and I didn't realize I was doing well, which was the act of actually doing nothing. Like you have to pursue doing nothing, which actively means that when someone asks you to do something, you say no. And you just spend your time doing things for just doing the activity. So I can't even remember the number of times I went axe throwing in a single week, right?
You did seem to be axe throwing the entire time.
Right? Because I was like, I enjoy this, and I'm not going to do this for some external reason. I'm just going to like do this to do this, right? Or it was when I really started going to the gym a lot, was like, yes, there is the end goal of you look better or you get fitter, but also I enjoy the process of like going to the gym, just doing the things at the gym.
I think most people like envy, most men anyway, would envy the space and time to go to the gym and get built, because you read about these stories about people doing it and you're like, yeah, well, if I had all the fucking time, all the time to go to the gym and eat that well, I'd bloody do it too. So actually it seems like a really good use of that that luxury.
Yeah.
You weren't doing it whilst you were building because you were too busy to.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you find like the end of that? Like, at what moment are you like, all right, it's kind of done now?
So I think it's when I internalized the reason why I got involved in business. I thought the reason I got involved in business was to make money. I've come to realize that was probably 10% of it. And actually 90% of it was I used business as my vehicle for significance. It was my way of showing myself and proving to myself that I was someone who could be somebody. For example, a very famous American, actually, this is a very good story. A very famous,
we'll be the judge of that.
A very famous American VC who invests a lot in media businesses, after the acquisition, messaged me on LinkedIn and said, we don't have a presence in Europe. We are raising specifically a fund for this. And it's I think it was 120 million fund. And we'd like you to basically lead it. And I was like, so my first thought was, that would be so sick to put on LinkedIn that I am now the general partner of a $120 million fund. And that would definitely get me all the bro points, right?
Yeah, for a day.
For a day. But also, quite frankly, going to events and saying I lead a 120 million fund is a flex, right? Especially being a young person, especially being a young black person as well. It's like, oh, that's a good flex. And I thought about it over a weekend and I realized I just don't want to do that.
It's definitely a lot of work.
Yeah, right? And, 220 and you make your money, etc. But I just thought, I just don't want to do that. But Timo, 18 months prior, would definitely be like, yeah, sign me up. And the inflection point came when I realized that it wasn't about, say, the prestige or the money. It was actually like proving to myself elements of significance, which is then when anytime someone asked me, hey, what are you doing next? I say, well, I don't know. And I'm happy not knowing. Or I just say, I'm exploring this random e-com idea, which would probably make like 10K a month, but it'd be pretty good. And so that inflection point came there. A second inflection point actually came in 2023 when my best friend passed away. I was in Serengeti. I'd taken myself and my ex for her birthday, actually. We'd gone to...
Presumably she wasn't your ex at the time?
No, she wasn't my girlfriend.
Post-relationship punishment?
No. We broke up in October, actually.
Okay.
I had taken her as a birthday gift to Serengeti. It was amazing. And just before that, I had actually been told, and I went to see my friend because he had been suffering from migraines. And I went there, and a day afterwards, I get a call from our other best friend, because basically it was like me, him, Richmond, and our third friend, Lawrence. We're basically like a trio. And Lawrence says, come to the hospital. Richmond is in the hospital. I'm like, okay, let's go.
Was this a shock, by the way? Did you know he was ill?
No, all I knew was just like Rich had migraines. That was it, right? I go, and then he says, yeah, so they said it's leukemia. And I was like, okay, let's go through this together. So that was on a Saturday. I went to see him on a Sunday. I went to see him on a Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, I flew out. And then on Sunday, I pick up my phone. So we've done this whole Serengeti thing with elephants, giraffes, etc. We're like in the middle of the Serengeti. And I pick up my phone, and Lawrence sends me this text. And he basically says, hey, I couldn't get through to you, but it's a shame to say this through the phone, and I'm really sorry to say this through the phone, but like Rich got sent to the ICU and he couldn't make it through. And my mind was in such denial that I saw that, and I remember this text, and even now I think about it, I go, what was going through then? I sent him this text and I said, hey bro, thanks for letting me know. Please stay strong for both of us, right? Because in my mind, I'd seen it as like Rich is gonna go through the ICU and he'll come back out, right? But we're having breakfast, and I'm thinking about Rich in the ICU, and I'm like, oh man, hopefully he can pull through. And we're then in the truck. It's me, my girlfriend, and the truck driver, and we're going for, I think, like our 5th day of Serengeti. And then it's almost as if someone opened up my brain and said, no, it's not what you think it was. And I just went, wait, what? And then I looked at my phone and I just started crying, like just bawling out, like a 5-year-old, just bawling out. And then I also showed my girlfriend, and she also knew Richmond quite well, and she also started bawling out. And then the truck driver, he and I had formed such a bond over the last few days. He also started crying. Like the whole atmosphere was just, and I remember, because I did the tribute at his funeral, and I remember that church, and I remember it overflowing with people, and thinking, as everyone does at funerals, they go, man, I wonder what my funeral will be like. And my thought was, I bet people would say, Tim was great, Tim was fun to be around, and he was a very good entrepreneur, or like he was a very inspiring entrepreneur, and he built this. And I was like, that sucks. That really sucks. Because Richmond, mate, I had pages for Richmond. Other people had this. Richmond would go out his way to help people, and there's no way you'd even know. And I was like, do you know what? I don't understand why I'm like trying to build this bigger thing and do all this thing. Actually, the thing that just gives me joy is just like the people that I do it with, and the actual like art of the business building, and then doing it with people where we build great memories. And that instantly, like, it's like a switch. The next day, I emailed a bunch of people who were like talking to me about, like doing a startup here, doing thing. And I was like, I think I'm not going to do this. And I remembered the people who I did enjoy my time with. And I was like, all right, let's figure out something. And just that inflection point really changed the way that I thought about life, business, and also just how to spend your time. It also made me think about this idea of, in the typical tech startup world, you pursue something for a very long time, and then you get a big win. And I was like, I think there's an alternative way where you basically have like these, what I'll call these short sprint startups. So you and people that you really enjoy spending time with work on something, and that thing just like starts to make money, and you enjoy the art of like building the business and at some point selling the business, and you just keep getting quick wins over and over and over again rather than just like waiting for some eventual crazy win.
There's a really lovely saying. I don't remember who said it, but it's not about what you do; it's about who you do it with.
Yeah.
And it always struck me as an amazing point because, you know, I've got 3 businesses, and actually every one of my business partners is someone that they're all different, but they're people that I love spending time with.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I've always been super lucky with. Like, I love spending time with those people.
Yeah.
And that's an awesome feeling. I think that's, you know, it's same with employees, right? Like the people that you work with, you're going to spend a lot of time with them. And if you like spending time with them, it's awesome.
Yeah.
It's actually just good time spent generally. And I think that's like such an important piece of entrepreneurial advice because a lot of people just do the thing because it is the logical thing to do.
Yeah.
And that sucks the energy out of stuff after a while. It's very hard to sustain enthusiasm if you don't enjoy who you're spending your time with.
I have a friend who just sold his company. It's used by a lot of people here. And it just got announced for like 600 million, right? And I remember talking to him and just thinking, he knew, right? Like he didn't care about the space, but he got into the space and it was like, oh, this is going to be good for me. This is going to be, but he was very self-aware in that he didn't get lost in the sauce. So when things went wrong, he was like, oh, okay, well, it's gone wrong now. Or when things went well, it's like, yeah, that's good. That's great. And he wasn't emotionally tied to it. And I think that's a bit of unlearning that I'm trying to do as well. It's also the reason why my business strategy has changed completely.
Okay, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Because I've been learning vicariously through you.
Yeah.
Let's take a quick break. When we return, we'll dive into Timo's approach to business without actually owning a traditional company. We'll explore his strategies for identifying opportunities in industries ranging from healthcare to aviation, and we'll discuss how he finds and capitalizes on arbitrage opportunities in unexpected places. Be right back. I'm going to level with you. I'm not the best manager in the world. I'm a decent coach, but management is my co-founder's thing, not mine. And thank God for that, because developing your team is one of the single most high leverage things you can do as a leader, which is why I'm really happy we're working with Personio. They're the all-in-one HR platform you need to handle everything, from hiring to onboarding, handling absences to managing compensation. Their features touch every point of the employee lifecycle, from onboarding right through to exit interviews. And because they automate so much of the boring but necessary HR admin, you and your managers can focus on getting the best out of your people. So, if you're leading a growing business and want to spend less time on HR admin, then book a demo at personio.com/secret leaders. That's personio.com/secret leaders. There's a link in the show notes. What is your business strategy? How do you even have a business strategy when you don't have a business? This is what I love.
Yeah. So my business.
Do you officially have a business? Obviously, yes.
Yeah.
You have to. So what's it called?
So I don't. So I guess
like a holding company.
Yeah. So I guess one. All right. How to think about a business? All right. So I guess there are 3 businesses here, right? So one is the personal brand as a business, right? And what is really fascinating is we've just got a pretty chunky deal with Penguin to write a book, and that's going to be quite good. But like all the personal brand stuff that we done feeds into that, the speaking engagements, etc., etc. The second thing, which I guess is more relevant to the audience here, is some kind of, I guess, M&A private equity style business, but in very, 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 very niche audiences. You know, there are a few ways you can create value. You can create value with your skill, you can create value with your time, or you can create value with your money, right? Which is like, I'm here to fund this thing, etc.
Or your network. Like
or your network, yeah.
Like whatever, the buyer's ready.
Yeah. And I think that it took me a lot of time to understand Actually, this is very profound. It took me a lot of time to understand that you didn't create value just through your hard work. And that was a big unlock for me. So, for example, we're currently doing a bid on the biggest numerology website in the world.
What does doing a bid mean?
We are in the process of buying the biggest numerology website in the world.
And what is numerology?
Numerology is like a cousin to astrology.
Right.
And it's basically, rather than star signs, it is numbers. So you could be like, take your date of birth, take your blah, blah, and like you are a number 5. And because you are number 5, you have this quality, and this quality.
You're calling me a 5 out of 10?
No, you're a like 9 out of 10. And so, but that is just an example when beforehand, not beforehand, but as well as this, we're building a big business in like some variation of like Crohn's disease and IBS, where the way that we're building it is super interesting. So I realized throughout the entire Fanbytes journey that actually the thing which I really enjoyed was the sale process. Like running the business was fun, it was cool, etc. But like the deal making is where it really happens. And so for me, I thought, how do I make anything I potentially do into the future? How do I make it as exciting as the deal process? So almost, how do I perpetually live in the deal process, right? So the way to do that would then be to basically make any business that you start or run basically a very long sales process where you are going to sell it, right? Which means that every time you're like, oh, we're doing this deal. So I'm going to pick this example here of the health one. So I spotted something, and it was that companies like WebMD, Mayo Clinic, which are really large healthcare companies, what they are doing is they're spending a lot of money on M&A. M&A being mergers and acquisitions, buying companies.
And is that because they find it easier with their enormous size and processes to acquire companies and run them better than it does to start something new because of their DNA at this point?
Somewhat. Actually, the main thing is so many of these companies are just big online media brands, right? And so Mayo Clinic is like, I have a spot on my neck. What is it? And then you go, Mayo Clinic / neck spots, right? These are the causes. These are the symptoms, blah, blah. But all of these businesses are basically massive, massive media empires. And the way that they grow is by bringing under the fold a bunch of other media brands and then redirecting their traffic directly to them. And so in so much of the spend that they're making, it's like buying content sites, buying things that are just going to grow their traffic without them having to spend a few years having to do that. So when I see that as an opportunity, I go, okay, you're spending, let's say 400 million a year on this stuff. I'm sure you can easily, spend 50 or 80 on something which I know you really need to get in. So then we'd look at and we'll go, right, what niches are they not already in? Okay, this sounds good. We're now going to build a business directly in that, but we're not going to use SEO. We're going to use different social media tactics and stuff to build huge online properties. And then we're going to say,
landing pages, getting really good at paid social,
Exactly.
really good at attention
Boom,
hacking, stuff
yeah.
that you're good at that they, as incumbents, won't be as good at.
Exactly. And then in a few years, you say, hello, Mr. Corp Dev at WebMD. Here's the thing that's making 8-10 million a year. You want to buy for 80. It would cost you maybe 160 to actually do it yourself with all the learnings and the insights and everything. This makes sense for you. Okay, bye. So I've been doing that a lot. There's a company I've just helped sell. I can't actually say it publicly because it's going to be out soon, but it does this in the seafood industry. And it's doing this actually in the seafood industry. And I'm guiding the founder through M&A. And it's very interesting because it's almost just like, well, someone needs this. We're going to do this. We're going to sell it to
Can you
them.
say the specific example without saying the company? As in, like, what does that even mean? Doing this in the seafood industry?
It is-
I get that it's a niche.
It's a B2B.
Probably a bigger niche than people realize.
It's
How big is seafood?
billions, like tens of billions. Because you think about it, right? When you're talking about, like, I guess the maritime industry, which is broader, you're talking about ships, you're talking about like boats, you're talking about food, you're talking about like, it's massive, right? And so actually being the B2B owner in there, that's pretty interesting. right? And there are a bunch of other people who would like to enter into that market. I just did this for a company I did it for a company who was in the aviation industry. That was pretty interesting. B2B aviation industry. If people want to get a look at what that sort of industry is, there's a company called Simply Flying, which basically all they do is just, they get all the news and stuff from the B2B industry. People come to them. But for example, for so many of these companies, what you're effectively doing is you are building audiences and distribution for them, right? So to give another example.
Well, can you give a specific example in the aviation industry?
Yeah.
So
okay,
what's the problem and solution?
Okay, so let's look in the aviation industry. There's a company called Simply Flying, right? They talk about the B2B side of flying. So they talk about the new purchase orders that Emirates are making, the new airplane parts, the new uniforms that staff are wearing, the new, just like stuff which if you are in that industry, you would really want to know. And so for them, what they are is they are a really an audience of hundreds of thousands of very high value people who work in the aviation industry. So then a larger company who perhaps supply Boeing with their rainbow flags or their wings might be like, hey, we spend so much on conferences, on events and all of that to try and access our customers. Why don't we just buy Simply Flying 7, 10, 15 million rather than us just like paying a ton and doing it over years and not really knowing how it's going to work. And that really has been the business strategy I've been doing recently, which is very different to just like, let's just endure something for a long time and sell it. It's more like, let's build profitable media groups, media entities, and then there will be someone who would want to buy it at some point. This is the exact thing that HubSpot did when they bought The Hustle, right? Like The Hustle, for those who listen, was like an email newsletter for tech, business, finance. And obviously a portion of those people were very much like startup people who would buy HubSpot's product. HubSpot go, we could just do this ourselves and try and build our stuff, or we could just buy distribution. So that's the big thing for me. I'm just like building up distribution and then I'm selling distribution whilst on the way making money from the distribution, which is very different from let's build this company here, let's scale this company, let's raise money, let's do all those things.
How do you literally, like, so the thing I'm trying to work out, firstly, the business plan on like the 0 to 1, like how you get it.
Yeah.
And the other part is more like the finding the opportunity. Like, how do you find the opportunity? Because the best way would be to be really well renowned in this specific niche and way of doing things and become the magnet that other people are looking for, the partner that does the thing or whatever. But that's not really what you're doing on social media at the moment. You're not really publicizing this is what you're looking for. And you're not trying to broaden your surface area of opportunity via social media. So instead it feels like it's more covert. So then the question becomes like, how do you find the right opportunities? Because one niche industry doesn't beget another niche industry.
So one niche go-to-market does transfer to other go-to-markets.
As a skill. That part I get, but not often in network opportunities.
Yeah. So the way you do that, I'm letting all the secrets now, but okay, I'll let some of the secrets. The way you do that is that...
Get your yellow pages. It's going to fucking divert our attention. Get your old yellow pages. You start looking through them.
Is that every industry, or rather every niche, has thought leaders.
Yeah.
And those thought leaders are typically people with very large audiences, typically Facebook groups. And so what you do is that you identify the people with audiences, and then you use the same go-to-market, which is Facebook ads, Twitter community, emails, blah, 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 blah. And then you just run that exact same play. And so that's what we've done in Numerology. And now we're parlaying that audience into like an actual media site.
But do you mean that you reach out to the people who already have the big audiences and already have their community and say, we can do this proposition for you, which specifically is designed to take you from this moment now to an exit?
Yeah.
Is the pitch basically, do you want an exit? If you do, we kind of know the playbook of how to take where you are right now into an exit. Or
can
we buy you and then we'll just do the exit ourselves?
Yeah. and that is the approach for the WebMD play. We've identified 3 big niches, and that for me has been way more exciting, and it feeds me with more pride when I wake up and I go, right, let's do this, rather than how do we raise money for this? Where's this, our Series A, Series B? Not for me.
And more pride because you can set yourself a clear journey from the outset, or from this moment, and we're getting all the way through to exit here, and we know that that's the journey.
Yeah.
Do you time frame it if you can? Like, do you try and time box this stuff?
So I aim to get at least one significant liquidity event within 18 months of doing it. And that significant thing could just be pulling out a ton in dividends. Mm-hmm. So one of the things we've obviously spoken about, but we haven't said on here, is I got involved in funding commodity businesses.
Yeah.
That's probably the best way to say it.
Sure.
And they provide a lot of liquidity every 6 months. So like every 6 months.
Through dividends, you mean?
Through dividends, through the sale of the asset. So actually, I'll just tell people. So basically, I got involved a lot in lithium mining, and specifically funding the extraction of the lithium. And
first question is the same as last question. But how does one do that?
So
is that through already? So as an example, is that through already being successful and having a good network, or could someone who is looking now hack that network? And find
So right. So the story of how I got into it. This is going to sound like the story of Nigerian Prince.
Okay, one more break. When we come back, we'll explore Timo's unexpected venture into the avocado business that is now funding his lifestyle. We'll also discuss why he believes finding the right people to work with is more crucial than finding the perfect project. We'll be right back. Are you building a SaaS or venture-backed business? Or are you just trying to grow internationally? Well, if potential customers or investors haven't already asked you about ISO 27001, SOC 2, or GDPR compliance, they probably will soon. Achieving compliance can unlock major growth for your company, but the process is often time-intensive and costly. This is where our partner, Vant, can help. Vant automates up to 90% of compliance work, getting you audit ready in weeks instead of months and saving you significant costs. Plus, Vant scales with your business, helping you successfully enter new markets, land bigger deals, and earn customers' trust. As a special offer, Secret Leaders listeners get 20% off Vanta when they go to vanta.com/secretleaders. That's VANT.com/secretleaders for 20% off. There's a link in the description.
This is going to sound like the story of a Nigerian Prince. I got a message on Instagram from a guy, and the guy said,
literally from a Nigerian Prince.
and the guy basically said, "Hey, I've been loving your content, blah blah blah." And I was like, "Okay, thank you." And he kept commenting on my stuff, and he kept saying stuff like, "Hey, let's talk business." The thing is, I get that probably 100 times a day. Hey, let's do business.
Yeah.
Like, all right, mate.
99 of them are me.
That's how I know you. And you know what? Like, this guy kept not bragging, but like nagging. And I said, "Okay, cool. I said, just like, tell me about yourself." Now, it turns out that he is the son of the ex-vice president of a country in Africa. And I was like, yeah, okay, mate. And then I Googled him.
So am I. Aren't we all?
Yeah. And then I Googled him and I was like, oh yeah, he actually is.
Right.
And then we became friends. And then what ended up happening was he basically was like, hey, we want to sell one of our lithium from us to the Saudis.
And just to be clear, lithium is like a gold rush because it's what's being used in electric car batteries, correct?
Yeah.
Right.
So the general playbook is the mines are found, the lithium is extracted, it is then refined, and then it's sent to like typically it's sent to like the Chinese or something like that, and then they sell it on to Tesla. Right. So basically the play is that stage 2 and 3, which is the extraction and the refinement, that basically is where I come in and I fund fund it, and then it's then passed on to the next people, etc. So that's actually how it came to be. And the first deal that I did was basically I will fund it, and we already have a buyer. So we already knew there was a Saudi family who were very interested in this, or a Lebanon family. And then we said, okay, cool. There's a thing. We're going to sell it and we'll make back our money. Well, it does very well. And I was like, that's interesting. We should do more of this.
So how, like, when you first, let's just be really clear.
Yeah.
You get a DM from someone and all these fucking comments, and then you're like, okay, yeah, I'll Google this guy. All right, fine, yeah, he's legit and stuff. But you're still putting millions down for a mine. That first time you do it, you must have been shitting yourself a bit.
So, do you know what? So to be transparent. So the first deal I did, I put in 2.8. And I'll tell you what.
Dollars or pounds?
In pounds.
Right. And that's to buy the whole mine, or how's that work?
So that's to fund, like to fund all the lithium from that particular mine, right? To fund the extraction. Okay. Just to note, I'm not involved in like the buying of the mines.
Right.
Or the operating of the mines.
Right. So someone owns the mine, or the land owns the mine, or however it works, but you get a license to extract, and the cost of doing business to extract it is 2.8 million, and therefore that's the cost of goods, so to speak. Yeah,
the cost of it in all, I think, was like 7 point something. So I put in a third of it.
Right, okay.
And was I shitting myself? No. The reason why is because I use the same principle as I'm doing in business, which is I already knew the buyer. So we had a conversation with the buyers. We knew they were good for the money. They have the money. Like, they are well known in the industry as like people. And all they wanted was basically like the access to, I guess, to the lithium, right? And so it was just like an arbitrage play. So was I scared? So I think the first time maybe a bit apprehensive, but you know what I did? And I actually got this from Tony Robbins. So Tony Robbins has this thing which basically says like, you should act like the person that you want to be, right? And I thought about it. I thought, well, in this deal, there is someone in this deal who is not scared at all. And I want to be that person. So I think even when I was doing the deal, I wore something different. I wore a white shirt, which made me feel like I was doing big deals, right? I was brainwashed myself to ensure I was that person, which meant that when I did send the money, it just felt like, yeah, this is what we do. But then I'm pretty sure like 2 days after, it's like, maybe the Saudis were fake, right? But, after the first one, then it just keeps going.
Yeah, okay. And so that playbook is like a rinse and repeat?
Yeah. Rinse and repeat. And then the other thing and then the only thing is maybe potentially the bias change. But to be honest, as with anything, once you find a good customer, you keep them, right? So likewise for them, once they find
a good buyer, everything's about trust.
Exactly.
So how does that business work? As in, is that a separate business on its own, right?
Yeah. That is a commodity business. And then the other thing I have under that is I fund the sale of avocados from Kenya and Tanzania to Sainsbury's and Waitrose here.
Hello, left field. All right, take me through how you get that deal. Where does avocados come from?
That is a friend of mine who I've known for about 2 years. Right. He basically, again, he's just in like the arbitrage business. And so, for example, he buys avocados for £1, sells them for £1.40. He does that 4 times a year. So therefore, it just keeps compounding and compounding. And so I started that. I put in a bit of money.
And what his issue is basically cash.
His thing is patient capital. So basically like someone who, yes, we could go down the lines of banks, etc., but they charge you a crazy interest rate because it's, relatively risky. Like you go from Kenya, Tanzania, etc. So I put in a bit and that pays me every quarter. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to come to Kenya with you to see how the whole thing works. And when I saw it, I was like, wow, this is incredible. Like, this is sick. Like, I can see the journey from we take these avocados from the ground, it goes to here to get washed, it gets sent to distributors here, and it ends up at a Sainsbury's in Brixton. It's like, wow, that's insane.
And then your bank account. That's the full journey.
And then bank account. So I did that whole thing, and now basically, that pays me every month. That actually funds my entire life and more. So
The avocado specifically.
yeah,
that's amazing.
because like that's a regular thing.
Yeah.
Makes like 45% a year. Crazy.
That's so great.
I know. It's interesting when I think about these things, and I think about the 21, 22-year-old Timo who thought that the life he wanted to live was the like Zuckerberg life, like build this tech billionaire life, and then go, wow, he would never have thought that the thing that actually gave him genuine happiness and fulfillment was doing stuff with people that he really enjoyed, spending time with, and then like almost spotting these random arbitrage opportunities.
And so is everything about what you want to do like next in this next era, so to speak, about arbitrage?
It's about not playing someone else's game.
But you are playing someone else's game in arbitrage.
No, because
you're playing.
I enjoy doing that
in a process, right?
Yeah, but the end goal for me is like I enjoy deal making.
Yeah.
Like that's my thing, and arbitrage is basically short-term deal making,
Yeah, that
right?
makes sense.
You know, buy this here, buy this here. Whoa, good deal, da da da, boom, boom, right? I enjoy deal making, and I think I will consistently enjoy deal making.
Okay. Is this easy? You make it sound easy. Is it low maintenance?
So I'll tell you the biggest stressful bit about all of this. It is choosing what opportunities you pursue. So it's not actually like the opportunities themselves are not particularly difficult. It is choosing which one, and that opportunity cost of thinking, oh, that could have been this, that could have been that. And the proxy for doing that now is who I do it with. I've come to realize that it's definitely not about the opportunity, it's about the who that I choose to do it with.
That's such a good framing.
Yeah.
Most people come up with, a system or whatever, but for happiness, that has to be the best framing out there.
And one big hack I did, I think this would be very useful to your audience, would be I wrote down on a very long sheet of paper the perfect features of a potential co-founder. It went all the way from what's their experience, what books do they read, what is their morning routine, how do they talk, what's their fitness regime. I had all of these things, and it was so interesting that the more that I started to be detailed about that, every single person that I do this with, every single person, the avocado person, his background, the stuff that they're interested in, tick. And every single time I've tried something which hasn't quite worked, it's actually been because I've deviated a little bit from the who.
What are you looking for?
So,
Well, you're looking for people that work out. You're looking for people who are into hypnotism.
So, ironically, I'm looking for people who don't believe necessarily in schedules. Like that, for example, that very specific thing. So I can just tell you. So for business stuff, one, I'm looking for people who are self-organizers because I am not organized. I'm actually diagnosed ADHD and also bipolar. Go figure. I'm looking for people who have had some degree of success in their lives already. This sounds very elitist, but for me, I think it's very important to work with people who maybe they were debate champions, maybe they've sold a company, maybe they've done something. I'm also looking for people who can have hard conversations. And how do you do that? When you work with someone, you perhaps are a bit more direct with them to see how they would actually come back with you. There was someone who I was very excited to do something with in the astrology space, but then we had like they were meant to do something, or I was meant to do something actually, and I just had a very direct conversation as to why I couldn't, and he just kind of just couldn't look me in the eye, was all that stuff. It's like, you're great, but you don't take the box of like, can you have hard conversations? Because in business you have to. So like, there's all these different factors. I think there's about 23 or so, which is just like, has this, does this, does this, does that. But
have you created a checklist for yourself?
Yeah.
And you're always adding to that checklist or taking away?
I was taking away. One of the things which I took away, wow, okay, this is going to make me sound so just off, but I was saying I wanted people who were in their 20s. That's something that I took away. The reason I wanted people in their 20s was just because I was fully cognizant of the fact that when you're in your 30s or 40s, that you have a family, like work and doing this sort of like randomness is counterproductive to you having a good family, right? If you're like, hey babe, I'm going to Tanzania now to like
motivations
oversee.
of what makes you happy are different.
Exactly. And so one of my criterias was like someone in their 20s, right? I got rid of that. And the reason I got rid of that was because I met enough 30-year-olds who actually, yes, they had a family, but they were able to compartmentalize life and work in a way which meant it didn't actually take away from what we're doing. I thought, okay, that doesn't make sense. Get rid of it.
You're basically looking for a psychographic, not a demographic.
Exactly. So the takeaway for your listeners here is that, yes, you can design your business, but I think even more importantly, you can design who you choose to do the business with. And it's as easy as, here is a notepad. These are the criteria. This is what I'm good at. This is what they're good at. But like, go as much detail, the same way that you think about having a very detailed girlfriend or boyfriend, do that same thing, because it's very weird and it's a bit woo-woo, but the world would attract those sort of people to you.
I mean, it's logical. It's the same as with hiring, right? If you want to hire like a great marketing director, you've got a pretty good idea about what you're looking for, your company values, their skills, like the attitude, ability for feedback. Why on earth would you do that with a business partner? It's even more important.
100%.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
You know, this may come as a surprise to people, and I'm sure so many founders are going to be able to really empathize with this. But I don't think I like really enjoyed the journey of Fanbytes. And I think a lot of founders can probably empathize with not really enjoying their business because it was a means to an end, or it is a means to an end. And I'm now in a space that I really enjoy the actual journey. Like I really enjoy hopping on a Zoom with like my partner and talking about, all right, cool. So how are we going to do this thing? I look forward to that. And I think most founders, maybe this is me speaking from a position of privilege, blah, blah, blah. But like, I think most founders don't realize how easy they can move from not enjoying to enjoying something. If they just like step back and critically think like, do I enjoy the people? Do I enjoy the opportunity? Do I need to raise that money? Do I need to do this thing? If I don't need to, then just don't do it.
Yeah, because a lot of this stuff in entrepreneurship is about survival, and that's really the place where need should come in.
Yeah. It's weird. People leave things that they wanted to do things that they didn't want to do.
Yeah, I mean, look, a lot of founders create their own cage.
Yeah.
Like categorically, which is a horrific feeling because you should know better and you don't.
Yeah.
A lot of people know they're going to create their own cage and walk straight into it. I mean, how many people do VC funding exactly that way? They know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
They walk into it anyway, and the moment it happens, they're like,
oh no,
what have I done?
Yeah.
Okay, so it strikes me like the thing that you're actually articulating, enjoying, is novelty.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that you don't really necessarily get in a startup game. You're building long term, you're building the systems, like it's compounding, and compounding in the same thing is, as we know, incredibly productive and profitable, but can be very, very samey. Whereas actually what you're doing is bouncing around a bunch of things. There's a lot of novelty, avocados, this, mine, that, like media here. Of course that's fun.
Yeah.
Of course that's fun. But is there going to be a point, you think, where there's just super distracting? Like, how do you basically split your time properly to focus on making those actual opportunities? So, or is that the cheat code of basically having the money, which is that, like, this is what I'm bringing to the table, so stop fucking bothering me with any operational shit?
So I think at some point I would decide something that I want to commit, let's say, the next 5 to 7 years of my life to. Ironically, I think that thing will come when I decide what I want to do from a family perspective. And I'm also very aware of the fact that I'm speaking about these things as like now a 29-year-old single man who doesn't have many commitments. I think when eventually that happens, I would choose to decide to focus on something for a long period of time, but with the same intention of building something designed to be sold. I think that for me, I did a lot of soul searching. I spoke to therapists. As you know, next week I'm speaking to a hypnotist.
Yep.
Random. But I'm speaking to her because I want to unlock another part of my brain as well to understand, like, is this truly what I want to do? Or more importantly, is there something which actually can get me, is there something that gets me to my end goal of just like real fulfillment, which I have not been aware of?
Interesting. So I think what's good is you have the awareness that you're taking advantage of being your age, your stage of life, and all those things. You know, the idea of starting something that has a definable end on a cycle, almost, right? Like you could buy and sell a mine, and the only reason to do the next one, excuse me, the only reason to do the next one is because it would make more money.
Yeah.
Which obviously becomes exceptionally attractive and is its own trap. And your ego will tell you to do that. But at the right point in your journey, you could also say, but I don't need to.
Yeah.
And you can just stop that one, which is different to being in the middle of a business journey.
Yeah.
You can't just stop that. I mean, you can, but it's hard.
You can, but it's hard. But I guess, look, like the thing that I want people to take away from this is not everybody now go farm avocados and mines. It's actually the fact that...
those are my notes gone.
It's actually the fact that I think for so many of us founders, we zombie our way through the journey, and there's rarely times where we critically step away and go like, is this what I truly want? And I was definitely on that path of, right, like, hey, let's go do a $120 million fund, let's go do a B2B data thing, let's go raise money. Because also, as you know, one of the honey traps to VCs is a previously successful founder, right? It's like, oh my God, let's just, and I had that as well, right? And I had all this stuff where I could have easily said yes. But critically understanding what gives me joy. And I'm not saying, again, I fully understand that founders are in different things, but look at your current business. Maybe there's a way you like mold your business so you do the things that actually also provide you joy, rather than feeling it as just going through this thing that you don't have any choice over, because you chose to start the business. So by definition, you should be able to choose how to run the business,
Yeah. So I'm going to take that lesson and read my fucking DMs. I don't know who's in there, but I offered some crazy shit. I should pay attention.
Yeah.
Okay, dude, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for coming back.
All good. Sweet. Nice.